Hi, my name is Jamie Besance. I'm the Visitor Engagement Coordinator at Soldiers Memorial Military Museum in St. Louis. Um, Thank you to everyone for attending this virtual panel. We are open Wednesdays through Sundays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're in downtown St. Louis, and we've got a traveling exhibit from the Smithsonian Institute right now called Righting a Wrong, Japanese Americans in World War II. And that will be in through October 3rd. So 5 or 6 more weeks. So be sure to come down and check it out if you're interested. Thanks to our members for their support. It lets us put on programs like this. And thanks to the panelists for joining us today. I'll introduce them in just a moment. But first I need to go through just a few logistical details. So each of the panelists will speak in turn, and then we'll open the floor to questions. If you'd like to submit a question, please use the Q&A box in the bottom of your Zoom window. That's where I'm going to be looking for them rather than in the chat box. Today's presentation is being recorded, so if you want to see it again or if you want to share it with anyone else, it should be posted to the Missouri Historical Society's YouTube channel just a couple days from now. Your feedback is always important to us. When you close the webinar, your browser should automatically open a short survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you would fill that out. And if you need subtitles for the program, there's built-in closed captioning these days on Zoom. You can find that button at the bottom of your Zoom window as well. Once the speakers get going, I'm going to post a few links in the chat. If you're interested in signing up for our newsletter and hearing about other events like this that we put on, or if you would like to become a member, and also a link to our YouTube channel where all of the previous online programs that we've put on can be found. So with all of that out of the way, I'll introduce today's panel. From our left to our right, we've got Harry Ellsbury, who's a Marine Corps veteran who saw combat in Vietnam. We've got Sharon Reese, who's a Navy veteran and these days works as a veterans representative. Maria DeRoyne, Navy veteran who saw combat in Afghanistan. Jim Norris, a US Army medic and Purple Heart recipient who served in Vietnam. And Francis Williams, the state president of the Oklahoma War Mothers. So thank you all for joining us today. And if you would just take a few minutes, starting with Harry, if you would just take a few minutes to tell us about your time in service, or other other life events, or just other topics that are important to you. Harry?
Yes, good morning or good afternoon. I graduated from high school in 1966. My father was a paraplegic from World War II, so we moved to California because my oldest sister was teaching school there. He liked the weather, so we just moved out there. I was in the college, but I wanted to join the Army. My sister was married to a Marine, so he said, well, I had to be a Marine, so I had to join the Marine Corps. And so I left college and joined the Marine Corps. I took them 6 months and 10 days till I got to Vietnam. When I got out of the Marine Corps boot camp, I gained 10 pounds, lost an inch off my waist. I could do one-arm push-ups, etc. It was pretty physically endowed. I got to Vietnam and I was there there for the Tet Offensive of 68, and I saw artillery, bombs, etc., all the time. I had to be on the line once or twice. I saw Quezon twice. I went up one time and it looked like Colorado. The next time I went to see Quezon, it looked like Arizona. So I got out the Marine Corps 24 days early to go back to college, and I wasn't that smart. Thank you.
Wow, well, that was a whirlwind tour. Thank you very much, Harry. Now I think a lot of our audience probably has heard of the Tet Offensive, but we may have audience members, especially people who are still students, who maybe don't know much about what that was. Would you be willing to give us a brief overview of that history?
I was there. I was in a motor transport battalion that we used to go and do transport from Da Nang all the way to Quezon. When I was there and the Tet Offensive hit, they took over the little village outside, and we couldn't bomb them because they would let the villagers out. So we'd get our motor rounds would come in every 3 or 4, about every few hours, and they took over the city of Way. And when they took over the city of Way, they took over the artillery. We got artillery from them occasionally. That was like I was 6 miles south of Way at the Fubai Marine Corps base. And they shut down everything, the Marine Corps base. I did see the Connex boxes, which contained bodies, and they were just like little Connex boxes like you see going down the road, and they were just full of bodies. So it was pretty hard. And after it was all over, I was on the first convoy back to Quezon after the Tet Offensive, and I got to Quezon, and we got in there, and as soon as I got to the base, we got inside the base, people started running around. I thought they were celebrating. They could hear the artillery coming from Laos and Cambodia. They knew they had 6 or 7 seconds to hide. I learned when they heard it, I knew to hide also. I slept in a bunker the first night with a 6'4" major, and he wanted to know if I slept all night. I said, yeah. He said, how about the artillery barrage? I said, I slept good. He said, how about when the artillery depot went off? I slept through that.
Wow.
So, was kind of tired. You're on a convoy, you don't sleep much because you're looking. And so we got there. And so I left Quezon, and that was not unforgettable.
Yeah, no kidding. For those who might not know, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Harry, but Tet is the Vietnamese New Year, and it's one of the biggest festivals of the year. And in 1968, the North Vietnamese Army organized a big surprise attack, and it was one of the biggest offensive operations of the war. Is that right?
Yes, and when I was at Fubai when it hit. They came in one night, the LP, the listing post of the Army was there on that north perimeter, and they came in and said they're coming in. I saw the what is known as a quad, which is 4 50 caliber machine guns, and a Duster, which are twin 20 caliber rocket launchers. And I just saw them shooting out like that, looked like the 4th of July. It was very colorful. But they never got in. I was about 200 meters back, sitting on a 50 caliber machine gun. If they got to the first line, I was on the second line there.
Wow. Thank you, Harry.
No problem.
Sharon, what have you what's kind of the most important to you to share today?
I am also a veteran. Was in the military, Navy from 1984 to 2004. And I think that anyone that actually joined the military, we are community servants after that. So for me now, it's to pay it forward to veterans and ensure that the
I'm sorry, I think you froze. Uh-oh. Please excuse us while we try to resolve some technical difficulties. Okay, I think we're back. Sorry about that, everybody. Um, Sharon, the last thing I heard from you was, service after your time in service and ensuring that all veterans, and then we lost you.
To ensure that our veterans know what benefits they could get from VA or even just in the system from other organizations that's willing to help with their roofs, with their bills, with education. Just sometime as a veteran, we just don't know the other outlets after the military. Because we're so used to being part of a group and team players and team people that want to work as a team. Sometimes our transition is a little difficult as we transition back from a war zone or just back from out the military, trying to transition over to civilian. So we're just here as an organization to assist and help.
Got it. Is that a nonprofit organization or a government agency of some kind?
It's a nonprofit. It's Veteran Connection Organization of Bartlesville.
Got it. Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Maria, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Maria DeBruyne. I was in the US Navy for 20 years. I retired out. I saw combat in Afghanistan, and I really enjoyed my whole career in the Navy. I was a police officer and went from doing regular police work to protection, and that was my my job in Afghanistan. I was a convoy commander, the first female for ours, and I also was a protection officer, and I had to protect two of our security or intel personnel, and that actually, you know, my job over there concreted a job when I got back into the States as NCIS personnel, which was mainly protection also, but it was in DC.
Oh, interesting. So when you say you were a police officer in the Navy, is that mostly an internal kind of thing, or were you literally serving as a police officer in Afghanistan?
No, as in Afghanistan, I was a protection officer.
Okay.
And so, but it all falls under being a police officer. But before I went there, yes, I did regular police work, patrols. I was a watch commander, an FTO, and then, I went from FTO up to watch commander, and but just regular police work. But then we got training and different skill set, and they needed me in Afghanistan to do something different.
Right. Well, Johnny had mentioned that that you saw combat during your time in Afghanistan. Is that something that you'd be willing to tell us about?
Sure. Well, whenever I went, it was not safe. It's still not safe. They were giving weapons back to us. There was actually a point where they were bringing weapons, and there was camaraderie. Part of my place in there was to make it look like it was okay to walk around in Afghanistan. And so I was actually, you know, my boss made me go out and do stuff and be a part of the community. And it wasn't nice. It wasn't, you know, the first day that I was there, they rammed me off the road and I landed in a minefield because I was a female driving. I've had weapons pulled out on me and stuff like that. But once you make yourself the bigger person, that they tended to be better. That I could go into different circumstances and whatnot, being broke down on the side of the road and them coming, you know, don't know if it was Taliban or the Shiites or whatever it was around, but they were there and they came and we got out as quickly as we could before things actually happened that were very terrible in that area. But it was always dangerous. It is always dangerous to be out there.
Thank you. When you say make yourself the bigger person, what do you mean by that?
Well, when they look at females out there, you're nothing, even regardless of what type of combat or armor you have. And when you assert yourself there, then they tended to step back and give you a little respect, but you had to assert yourself. I mean, I got thrown off the road the first day that I ever drove, you know, and the only true reason is that I was a female out there. And it was the first time I ever, you know, I practiced T-boning cars to move them because that's part of my job as a police officer. But it was the first time that I was ever aggressively attacked in such a manner. And it really makes you realize what you have to do as a person to step up to meet that type of action.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see. We've got Jim Norris. As a reminder to the audience, he's a U.S. Army veteran. He was a medic in Vietnam, and he's a Purple Heart recipient. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your time in service, please?
Well, without getting into any war stories, I give you a little history about myself. Is back in 1967, what inspired me, I guess, to go into the military was I always used to watch the evening news with Walter Cronkite. And the 173rd Airborne had a big battle around Dak To area on Hill 875, and they lost 100 and some, I can't recall how many men they lost, but they had a boot ceremony. And I can't understand, or I can't explain how I felt. I felt a sense of sadness for those young men that lost their lives. And I felt a sense of pride knowing that these young men gave their lives for our safety back home. Or that's the way I felt about it at the time. And later that year, in '67, I decided rather than sit out the war in Vietnam, that I would join the Army. And another reason I joined is because in my family we have several veterans. My dad was a Marine in World War II. My uncle was a Marine in World War II. I had an uncle that was Army Air Force in World War II. I had a great uncle that served in World War I, and I just felt an obligation to also to serve because of the family history there. I joined when I joined, then I also volunteered after basic training to go Army Airborne. I became a paratrooper, and I also at that time volunteered for Special Forces training. My good friend Johnny Williams, he was already out at Fort Bragg going through his Special Forces training at that time, and without getting into a whole bunch of stories about that, he and I kind of hooked up together out there, being hometown boys, and we tried to make the best of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. In 1968, I decided I was tired of serving stateside, so I volunteered to go to Vietnam. And I had to go before a panel of Special Forces officers to tell them why I was leaving Special Forces, and I wanted to go to Vietnam. I volunteered, and so anyway, I make a long story short, I got orders because I volunteered, and I wound up in Vietnam in early 1969 in Vietnam. And because of my training back at Fort Bragg, being a medic, I didn't serve with the Special Forces team over there. I served with the 173rd Airborne, the exact outfit that I saw on television that lost so many men at Dak To. And I served for a little over 18 months with the 173rd in Vietnam. I did my 12 months, and then I volunteered to do another 3 months in country over there. While in countries, being a combat medic, I saw my share of trauma. And like a lot of young men that came back from Vietnam, I had a lot of problems with PTSD at that time. And to this day, there are some of us that still have certain problems with PTSD because of the trauma we witnessed, the trauma that we experienced firsthand. As you know, I was wounded in action. I received 2 Bronze Stars with V's for valor. I also received the Air Medal because of the number of combat air assaults I went on. And I'm proud of my military service. And when I came back to the United States, I felt like even though I was out of the military at that time, I felt like I needed still yet another connection with the military. So I joined with an active reserve unit, the 12th Special Forces Group. And I served with them as the senior team medic. And I served with them for a year. And I'm proud of that service also. But like I said, without getting into any war stories and so on and so forth, I'm proud of my military service. I feel a sense of sadness watching these young men now going overseas and serving in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, where they not only have to go over and do their tour, they might go over 3 or 4 times and do tours. Whereas in my time, if you did 12 months in country in Vietnam, that would satisfy your overseas tour. I really feel sorry for some of these young men that do 2 or 3 or 4 tours, and I can't imagine the problems that they have when they come home.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's about my introduction.
Oh, the elimination of it, well, the selective service still exists, but it hasn't been used since Vietnam, and I have to guess that a lot of that is down to the public backlash during the war against the draft, and then obviously, like you say. Well, it seems to me like one of the effects of not using the draft is then that the burden is a lot heavier on the people who volunteer. Do you have any feelings about the use of the draft?
Say that again. Do I have any feelings? What?
About the use of the draft? And whether that can be a good idea?
Well, I feel that the draft served its purpose at the time. I believe now that our military has gone so technical anymore that they're looking for people that are in college and college graduates, and they try to recruit these people and that have a higher education, a certain skill, and the volunteers, I believe, I believe that you have a more effective military
Mm,
serving if you have people volunteering, wanting to go
mhm.
to the military, not people that have to go into the military. That's the way I feel.
Right. That's interesting. I've asked the same thing of some of the active duty folks that I've had a chance to talk to, and I've heard a similar thing. I was talking to officers, and they said that it was just so much easier to train people when they volunteered. Um, so yeah, well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Um, Last up, we have Frances Williams, who's the state president of the Oklahoma War Mothers. Would you please tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yes, first of all, my grandmother was a charter member of the American War Mothers Hominy chapter, chapter number 6. And she was a war mother because my father and my uncle were veterans of World War II and Korea respectively. My mother was also a war mother because both of my brothers served in Vietnam. And I became a war mother because I have 2 sons who are veterans. And my oldest son went to Desert Storm. And I am presently the Oklahoma State President of the American War Mothers. And it's a position I'm very proud to hold. And I have been, I feel like it's an honor to be the mother of veterans. And I always wanted to do something to help all the veterans. I watched all these Vietnam veterans, especially because of my age group. And they had a very hard time adjusting when they came back to the United States. And it wasn't easy for some of us because we didn't know what they were going through. And we had no idea. Even though my father was a veteran, he very seldom talked about his experiences in the war. And I know it bothered him somewhat. Now I can look back and see that it bothered him somewhat, but he never told us about it. And he fought in the Philippines. And my uncle, about the same. He didn't talk too much about his experiences in Korea either. They just didn't talk about it to their children. Now they may have to their friends or other relatives who served in the military, but you know, someone like me, I had no idea of what these people went through. So when it's your own children who come back as veterans, then you want to do something to help them and support them. And there is a camaraderie amongst all mothers who have children in the military. And I'd like to read you a little comment, and it's from this brochure from the American War Mothers. It says, "Only the mother of the person who stands beside my child in the defense of our country knows how I feel." And that sums it up pretty much. And I'm just happy to say that the American War Mothers are still in existence. We're a very small group now, but we still have about 6 active chapters in the state of Oklahoma, whom all are Native Americans. And I'm very proud of that fact that Native Americans hold they're the most, I guess, members of the military of a group that
The highest rates, I think, of enlistment, something like that.
served as minority groups.
Hmm.
That's what I'm trying to say. And so we are still here and we're still trying to keep our chapters going because we still have children who join in the military and we want to give them all the support that we can. And I encourage people, when your son or daughter goes into the military, give them your love and your support always, whether you agree with their decision or not. It's their decision. And I think it's a very important one when they decide that they want to defend this country. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Frances. You preempted one of the questions I've got for later a little bit there. Well, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. If you've tuned in since we got going, we are about to open it up to questions. If you have a question for the panel, please just type it into the Q&A box in the bottom of your Zoom window. That's going to be the best place for me to find your questions. And while we wait for audience questions to come in, I'll just pose a few of my own to the panel, if that's all right. The first question I had is just, what's something you wish that everyone knew about military service?
I think as a veteran, I think that we are of all different races and dialects, but I think that we are a team of one and we're one big family. That's what I would say that everyone needs to know, is that we might come from different parts of the United States, different ethnic groups, but for the most part, everyone is in this room is my military brother, sister, and I just appreciate each one of them for their services and what they provide to our country.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other responses? Oh, please.
I think that military service allows, at least my experiences were that it opens the door for young men and now young women to mature. And especially if you're in a combat area, you grow up real quick, and you get an opportunity to have responsibility, whereas you would not have the same responsibility if you had not served. Responsibility and maturity at a young age, where that you may be put in charge of men or programs or whatever, and you have an opportunity there to grow real fast, I believe. That was my experience.
Thank you, Jim. And I think this was the question that you all already spoke to a little bit, Frances, was what's the most important thing that people can do to support active duty and veterans, or the families of active duty and veterans?
Well, just let them know that you do support them. There are a lot of support groups, and the War Mothers try to give funding to various groups, you know, the VFW, American Legion, the paralyzed veterans, and so on and so forth. Do some volunteer work at the veterans hospitals, and just be out there, you know. Like I said, if your child or your daughter, your son wants to join the military, and even if you don't agree, it's their decision, but support them and you know, just listen to them. And I think, personally speaking, military did a lot for my sons and my husband. So I'm very grateful for all the things that they learned, that they were taught. And, I don't know what else except try to go to reach out to them, because they're not always going to reach out to you. You sometimes have to go to them and ask them what you can do to help them.
So the social support is the most important aspect in your mind.
I think so, yes.
Thank you, Frances. Any thoughts from other members of the panel?
Well, I believe that the social part is very important because there are combat veterans my age that don't necessarily seek help. We don't, I had PTSD before I even left the military, but it wasn't until the military said, hey, listen, we're transitioning and making it a smaller military. You're going to have to go here, that I was like, okay, well, now I know I need help. Back then I was a cop and I was afraid that they were going to make me drop my gun, that I was going to have to leave my position, which I had worked so hard to get to. And because it was a male dominated, still is a very male dominated position to be a police officer in the military. And I sacrificed my mental health to keep where I was, because but I didn't know that my partner was doing the same thing. I didn't know that the guy down the way is doing the same thing either, because we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about what was happening. And in that fact too, the military, the active duty failed us also, because there was those hard chargers that came back and they're not anymore. What happened? Nobody asks about that. And I was one of them. I went from being the chief of police, having 75 people underneath me, to going and doing a post and asking nobody to come and bother me. And it was a dark time, and we do need resources. As like me right now, I do need that resource. I need somebody to be there, to be like, hey, listen, I see that you're not acting, or you want to talk, or even if I don't want to talk, it's nice that somebody says, okay, you got somebody here for you. But so as a civilian, the camaraderie, I miss the camaraderie. That's what it is. It's you look at all of us, and we've all come from different walks, but the camaraderie is still there, regardless of what branch or anything like that. And when you leave the military, the camaraderie is gone. It's not as tight as it was. And so I believe that outreach and having facilities and saying there's a post here, if you need help, come in. And eventually somebody like me might come in.
The camaraderie, it's been interesting to me to see the way that groups like the American Legion kind of organize themselves in a military kind of a way. I guess that's what they're used to, maybe. Any other thoughts on especially on what individuals can do to support active duty veterans and their families? All right. What is kind of similar to the first question? What's something that you wish everyone knew about the Osage Nation?
Well, we have a chief right now, Chief Standing Bear, and he is very supportive of veterans. And I feel that he is probably the first chief that we have had who has gone out and actually done something to help the veterans. And he sponsored a bill to appropriate money from our Osage Tribal Congress to build a memorial. And we have a beautiful memorial, and it's the first type of salute to our veterans that has ever been done by the Osage Nation. And I'm extremely proud of that memorial. And I only regret that many of our veterans, were not here to see it, but the ones who are here now, I hope that it brings them some comfort and let them know that the Osage Nation does appreciate their contribution and the sacrifices that they made for everyone. But, their own tribal members are extremely proud of them.
I understand there was recently an exhibit in the museum about Osage service in the military over the decades. Was that in connection with the memorial?
Yes. It was
Okay.
done, around about the same time. And Marla can probably give you a lot more information regarding that, but it was really, really a wonderful exhibit. And it did go along perfectly with our dedication of the memorial. So it was, it's really something I think that I wish everyone could come to see.
Thank you. Were there other responses for what's something you wish everyone knew about the Osage Nation? Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I guess we are becoming more visible in regard to recognizing the service that our veterans, our young men put in. Not only through our memorial, but I believe that there's a gentleman that's working right now to form an Osage Nation color guard, which we've never had before, strictly an Osage Nation color guard. I'm going to bring this up about, I can't recall if it's been 2 or 3 years, maybe it's more like 3 years ago. I was at a War Mothers dance. And after the dance was over with, a young man came up to me and we were talking, and I can't recall what tribe he was, that's immaterial, but he said, the Osages don't really recognize your veterans like some of these other tribal nations do. And I got thinking to myself, I don't understand what he's talking about, because we have our annual War Mothers dances. We have our American Legion Post 198, which is primarily a lot of our Osage veterans belong to it. We have and that was before we had our war memorial put up. And I believe that we're moving more toward recognizing our veterans, visibly recognizing our veterans, whereas maybe before we recognized our veterans, but maybe not as visibly as some of the other nations. So I believe that we're moving more in that direction of visibly recognizing our veterans. That's what I'd like to talk about.
Thanks, Jim. If there's no more responses there, the last question I had was, how do you feel that your time as a Native service member was different from that of non-Native service members, and how do you feel it was similar? I suppose
Yeah.
not everyone on the panel was in the service.
didn't understand the question.
Repeat the question.
Oh, yes.
Related to other.
How do you feel that your time in service as a Native service member was different from that of non-Native service members, of your non-Native counterparts? And how do you feel that it was similar?
Well, I'll start on that because I'm Native and African American and probably 10 other things. I'm actually Seminole and then I'm African American. So, and then I'm a female. So I'll speak on the female part of it because I think that it wasn't a Black, white, Native or Filipino thing. I think I seen it was a male female thing. So I can only speak on the glass ceiling that was there for the female veteran or active duty person. I personally felt it was a little harder for the female to, we always had to do 150 when the guy was probably doing 80%. I was a machinist repairman for the 20 years in the military. But my first duty station, I remember going to the machine shop and they wanted me to make coffee and I had 5 or 6 NECs and I was a certified journeyman machinist. So I think the first initial look is, oh, she's secretary, you know, instead of seeing us for the NECs that we carry. So I think it was harder for the female versus a color thing. That's just my opinion.
Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, I didn't see any, like I said, the camaraderie. Those are your brothers, those are your sisters. You know, you trusted them with your life when you went out. There was a huge problem with being a female. Like I said, I was the first female convoy commander for Afghanistan in my time, and they didn't want me to have that, even though I had trained and did everything that I was supposed to, had every nomenclature absolutely right. It wasn't, they didn't just didn't trust that I could do the job. But I didn't, difference, I really didn't see a difference, honestly, being the Native American or being one of the only Native Americans in the group. Nobody, I mean, there were stereotypes people asked you, and I would hope that, I mean, it was never absolutely derogatory, but they were interested in Native American and Osage and Osage and Northern Cheyenne, reservation life. There's reservation life is way different from my mom's people up north than to down here, but it's. I really, other than being very spiritual, I'm a very spiritual person, but I grew up like that. That was passed down with my parents and my grandparents, and being Catholic and Native American church. That's that was the only real big difference, is that I went to church, but it was an obligation that I felt like I uphold. And but really, there was no difference between me and a Black person, me and a Hispanic or Filipino or white, other than, like I said, you still had those questions, and some of them were derogatory, some of them were racist, but it wasn't, some of them were just wanting to know, they didn't know, honestly. But I didn't, other than being a female in a very male dominated area, I didn't see anything like that, anything different in my time.
Thank you.
I noticed, when my oldest son received word that he had to report for active duty, and his group was being shipped overseas for Desert Storm. And we lived in South Dakota at the time, and we worked in a federal building, government building. And we had, there were several people who worked in that building had sons or daughters who were going overseas also. And so there were prayers, there were all different tribes represented there. And but But the one thing the parents all agreed, and not just parents, but everyone, we wanted these men and women to leave with prayers said. Native Americans do that. Ones here in Oklahoma did. Whenever our sons and daughters were going to war or going into the military, we immediately planned to have something spiritual done for them, praying for them, and letting them know that we were all there for them. Like I said, support, and send them off with prayers and good feelings. And Native Americans do that. I did not see a lot of that amongst other ethnic groups.
Interesting. Thank you. I feel like what I'm hearing overall is that kind of divides in race or ethnicity or ancestry weren't kind of the main thing that people were experiencing in their time in the service. Well, thank you for your responses. And we are running out of time here, so I better start wrapping up unless there were any other comments that people wanted to get out.
Jamie, I'm
Yes.
on camera, but it's Marla. I sent you a link to a video on the Veterans Memorial. It's on a YouTube channel. Would it be possible to show it here?
Oh, that might, so the main difficulty is that streaming video often doesn't work well over Zoom. It tends to work better if I can download it. You texted that to me?
Yes.
Okay.
I also emailed it to you.
So yeah, we can give it a shot. I found it. Okay. Is this showing up for people?
Yes. The sound isn't there though.
Oh. Try again. Better?
I do believe we could do a better job as a community to making sure that we honor those people not just one day a year. We honor them not just when somebody happens to walk by. We honor them by making sure that we help them back into this life because they gave away a part of them that they'll never get back, and a piece of them that their family will miss forever.
Jamie, it's not safe.
It's not what?
It is not synced.
Yeah, that's one of the issues that that we tend to run into with trying to do this. Would you prefer that we power through with it desynced, or should we? Maybe I can just share this link in the chat.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
I'm sure the link in the chat would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, everybody. Let's see. All right, there's that link. If you are watching this recorded and you can't see the link, the title of the video is Osage Nation Veterans Memorial on the Buffalo Nickel Creative Channel. So with that, I'll get into, thank you for sharing that. So Thank you to everyone who showed up on the panel today. I know we had a little bit of a rocky road getting here, so I really appreciate your flexibility. Thanks to everyone tuning in today or everybody watching this online later. Like I mentioned in the beginning, when you close out the webinar, it should open a little survey in your browser. If you would be willing to take a couple minutes to fill that out for us. And we are still, some of our programming is back in person at Soldiers Memorial Military Museum and at the Missouri History Museum, but we're also still offering some online programs. So be sure to check out the upcoming programs at mohistory.org/events, and our previous online events can be found on the Missouri Historical Society's YouTube channel. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one. Really appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.